What is up, guys? It's Rashaad with Bad Beat CCG here. I'm bringing you today my Violence Bruce deck that I'm playing in Vanguard OverDress. This is the exact list that'll be shown off in the video that'll be uploading later with a gameplay of Bruce versus Orphis. So I just want to get into the deck, and we'll start off obviously with the new rod line mechanic here. It's a generic starter, of course. If you go second, when it's wrote upon, you draw a card. Nothing special about the starter. We'll go on to the grade 1. This grade 1, when he's placed on the Vanguard circle, you pick a unit from your soul and call it. So at the time, this will be the only unit. You would call him down, and then you'll soul charge 1. And then on Rearguard circle, if you're in Final Rush, he does gain 5k power. On to the grade 2. When the grade 2 is placed down on the Vanguard circle, his ability is you take one of your other units and you put it back into the soul and you draw a card. So this way it generates you some soul just by using this rod line, because obviously you need the soul for Bruce's skill. Get on to Violence Bruce. Well, also this gains 5k power when you're in Final Rush as well. On to Bruce, what his skill is at the start of your rod phase. So the first turn that you play Bruce, you will not be in Final Rush. It's at the start of your next rod phase when he's your Vanguard, you enter Final Rush. What Final Rush is, it's just a state of game that you enter into that allows some of your cards to interact with it. It doesn't inherently do anything, it's just other skills that work off of it. And when he attacks and you're in Final Rush, you can Soul Blast 5 cards and untap your front row. Not counting him, maybe your other 2 rear guards on the front row, he won't untap himself, but you Soul Blast 5 and you will untap the front row. This is a really strong skill, especially since it only requires you to have Soul and no Counterblast. So that leaves you to have your Counterblast open for other things in the deck, because you see none of this rod line requires any Counterblast or any Soul Blasting, so you get to set this up pretty well. So we'll get on into the deck now. Of course, the other grade 3s we play are the other 3 copies of Bruce for a Persona Rod, because that Persona Rod is really big in this deck when you're in your Final Rush turn. You just Persona Rod over him, give your front row 10k, and now all of a sudden that's, if you've got 2 units, that's another 20k guard your opponent's producing from them untapping and hitting again with a 10k boost on them. And then one of the best cards in the deck, in my opinion, will be Marjorie. So what Marjorie does is when you're in Final Rush, when she attacks once per turn, you put one of your other units into your soul, you draw a card, you soul charge 1 card, and she gains 10,000 power for the turn. So this is a 23k swing when you're in Final Rush. You'll untap her with your Bruce because she generates 2 soul also. So this is fueling your Final Rush skill for Bruce. This is giving a boost. And she's untapping from the Bruce skill, swinging again for 23 twice if you didn't Persona Rod. So this is just a really good card to have. It's perfect for this deck. That's all the grade 3s. On to the grade 2s. Of course, we play 4 Diabolos Boys Eden. I think you have to have this card to play this deck efficiently, in my opinion. So what this card does is when he's untapped, when you're in Final Rush, he gains an additional crit. And he also gains 5,000 power for you being in Final Rush. So he's a 15k swing. And when his attack hits, you can Counterblast 1 and retire one of your opponent's rearguards. So just like that is some removal power there. He's big pressure himself, being an inherent additional crit. And so far, as you can see, this is the only thing in the deck that's required Counterblast so far. Even Marjorie's skill, as great as it is, did not require any Counterblast. So like you have the Counterblast available for this when they're on hit. On to the last grade 2s I play. This might change. I'm currently only playing 3 Steam Gunner Brody, but I'm thinking about upping it to 4 copies. And I know exactly what I'll cut from the deck, and I'll get into that when we get to the card. But what Brody does is just, you know, standard OverDress 2-drop, 10k power, 5k shield. But when he's put onto the Guardian Circle, you can Counterblast 1, and he gains 5k shields. So you can do this when he intercepts. So this can be called swing with it, and then your opponent's either going to want to swing at him to get him off your board, which is kind of like, you know, inherently dodging an attack for you since they're swinging here instead of at you. But if they don't, then you can, from rearguard, intercept with this guy, Counterblast a card, and he'll be a 10k boost, which, you know, 10k boosts don't exist right now in OverDress. They're all 5k or 15k or 50k with your overtrigger. So this card is extremely useful, and I'm definitely thinking about bumping up to the 4th copy. Now this card is amazing in this deck. What this card does is when you're in Final Rush, when he attacks or when he boosts, you can counterblast 1 and put one of your other units into the soul, and you add any card from your soul to your hand. So if you're using this Marjorie skill and you end up soul charging, let's say your over trigger, you soul charge your perfect guards, you have this skill available to you to just add them back to your hand whenever you need them. And since this deck is so lax on counterblast, you have these counterblasts readily available all the time when you're wanting to use these skills. So this is always going to be something that goes off for you when you need it. And then especially if you Persona wrote this turn and this unit is 18K'd and he swings once, you do the skill, you swing and with your Bruce, you untap him, you swing again, and you have another unit to replace, you can do it again. So let's say you've soul charged 2 perfect guards, you can add 2 perfect guards to your hand for this 1 card at the cost of 2 counterblasts, which that is extremely strong. Or if you just need some shields, your opponent's got a small hand, their battle cards aren't that big, you think you need a little bit of shields, you get your pressure in, you swing with these, or boosts, because it's also when he's boosted. You put your other units into the soul, you add some shields back to your hand, add a heal trigger, crit trigger back to your hand from the soul. So this is a really good all-around card. This card I play at 4 copies of because the soul charge is nice. Your rod line, when you get to grade 3, will only have you at 4 cards in soul. So you will need 1 additional card to soul charge you to get another cards in soul. So I play this card. When your Vanguard is Bruce, you soul charge 1 when he attacks or boosts. When you're in Final Rush, however, you soul charge 2. So it is a little bit tricky. So some people are only playing 3 because it's mandatory. Once you're in your Final Rush turns, it's soul charge 2 if he attacks or boosts, and that can cause you to deck out, lose games you to deck out, that type of thing. So it's definitely risky, but I definitely want to see 1 copy of this card so I can get that 1 additional soul charge, because then from there on out, your Marjorie will pretty much be generating your soul for your Final Rush turns and your Persona riding. So you won't really need to do this too many times, but I definitely do want to see 1 soul charger. Also, next on for soul charging, I do play Steam Gunner Gun Room, or Steam Battler Gun Room. I play this at 3 copies right now. You can cut, one of this to just put this to 4, because this is more of a controlled soul charge substance. So what he does is when you place him on your rearguard circle, you soul charge 1, and once per turn, you can soul blast 3 to draw a card, which sometimes you will be using the skill, especially if you have a hand set up to where you know you're going to be soul charging a lot across your turns. Then you can just do this early on and just soul blast 3 early on and draw an additional card. So he'll replace himself when you put him down in the hand. He'll generate you a soul still. This card's really good, like extremely good in both Dark States decks. The last card that I will honestly probably be cutting for the 4th Brody is Tartaros Beachgram. It's a blitz order. It gives you 15k shields if you have 5 or more soul. It seems the card only comes up when you've already soul blasted and you don't have 5 or more soul. So it's just a useless card. So I'm definitely going to be cutting this for a Brody. But when it comes up, the card's good when it comes up. But I just think it's not as useful. And then, of course, we play the new Perfect Guards. The new Perfect Guards, if you have 2 or less cards in your hand, when you use them, you don't have to discard. So if you have only 2 cards left in your hand, your opponent's swinging their last 2 swings in their huge columns, and you only have 2 Perfect Guards left, you can Perfect Guard both. Whereas in V Premium, if that was the situation, you would end up only being able to guard 1 attack because you only had the 2 Perfect Guards and having to discard the other one. So I think these new Perfect Guards are great, and definitely pick them up when you can and replace your starter deck ones with these. On to the triggers. I play only 7 crits, which is standard. I know a lot of people are playing 8. I'm currently only playing 7, but these ratios might change. The 7 has been good. And the reason I only play 7 of them is because I do play 4 draws, because I think it is very important to see your pieces when you want to see them in this deck. So instead of playing 3 draws and 8 crits, I opted to play 7 crits and 4 draws. This has been working out for me well right now, but I'm going to do more testing and more experimenting with this lineup to see which one truly is more important. And then, of course, for the last triggers in the deck, we play the standard 4 heals, and this is the over trigger of choice that I use. I know a lot of people don't like this over trigger and they think it's the most underwhelming one and it's not that great. And a lot of people will just use the over trigger from the starter deck because you do get to give your other two units that you're going to be unstanding anyway 100 million power each, making those two columns perfect guard or they're guaranteed to hit. Which that is really good, and that's a very fair point. That's a strong point, and I can easily see why you play that. The reason I play this one is because the extra 10,000 power and crit is extremely important sometimes. I know your opponent sees it coming. It's not something they can prepare for it, they can guard for it, and all this stuff. It's not a surprise to them anymore. But at the same time, this is still forcing extra guards every time you swing. This is inherently an additional crit every time you swing. So like that builds up. If they don't perfect guard your Vanguard once you've hit this on the drop check early on, and you end up hitting 1 or 2 more crits, then all of a sudden your Vanguard's hitting for 3 or 4 damage. So that's just like, the reason I play this one, obviously, is player preference. They're both good in this deck. They both serve their purpose. So it's really just player preference on which one you want to use. And that is the deck, guys. I thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know down there. Anything that you would like to see us do better, any suggestions you have on some content that we can create. We're trying to get back into the grind of making content more on the regular basis. So anything you have to say will definitely be a help. And I thank you guys for coming out and watching. And we'll see you on the next one.